TV47 Weekend Edition. As always, we get to the bulletin, but of importance, we take a look at very critical matters in the country. Andrin Kilemi asks me, kumbe bulletin can actually form or can be formed by education stories. And I tell her, yes, indeed, because we have carried packages of education stories that were quite intense and heavy. That just tells you how important we carry education as a country and how important we need to get into this discussion of understanding the competency-based curriculum. And I mean, just tell ourselves whether this is what we maintain or perhaps we need to make very many adjustments. Some people would argue that perhaps 844 worked just perfect. Others say that the competency-based curriculum is it because then it gets you to skills. But just how fair is it for the students that are in the urban areas vis-a-vis those ones that are in the rural areas? It's a discussion that we'll be having this evening alongside experts that will help us unpack and get to understand just how this equalizer is turning out to be, inefficient, and how we need to work around as a country to make sure that we get the competency-based curriculum right for every student, every child of the country. We'll be getting to that very conversation shortly, but at this very point, let's take a look at the highlights.
Tonight, CBC was seen as a breakthrough for the education system. The reality, however, is far from equal. Kids from some areas are still struggling with even the basics. Also tonight, the shame of Kaloit School.
MP analia tu hana usaidizi na yeye ndio MP area, the same to sitting MCA.
Kaloit School has been without roofing, forcing learners to undertake classes under the scorching sun for 2 years now, after the roof of classrooms were blown away by the wind. Plus, the National Police Service says the search for missing police officer in Haiti is still ongoing.
But
the family is seeking for answers to where their son is. And Maraga is not yet decided. Former CJ David Maraga says he is still consulting on whether he will run for the presidency in 2027.
We are talking with people. It is at the end of the day, the choice is the people's choice.
Well, some of you could be asking just who Andrin Kilemi is shortly on the elusive equalizer feature that she has worked on as to the discrepancies that we witness in the education sector. You will get to meet her as she tells us and narrates to us just how difficult, it is becoming for students to enjoy education in the North Rift. But away from that, we have other stories that I'm about to give you, appreciating our sign language interpreter, Catherine Simeloi, who will be guiding us on that. And my name is Linda Alela, and the broadcast begins right away. Now, the whereabouts of the Kenyan police officer Benedict Kafiru Kuria, reported missing following an ambush in Haiti last week, still remains unknown. Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja today has confirmed this. And meanwhile, today, the family of the Kenyan officer held prayers for their son at their Manda home in Kiambu County, saying that they are deeply distressed over the matter and are demanding for expedited search and answers for the government or from the government. Sheila Chelangat reports on the desperate cry of this family of their son missing thousands of kilometers in Haiti.
Until Tuesday last week, Benedict Kabiru Kuria had served in the Kenya-led multinational security support mission in Haiti for 8 months. In his last communication with his family, he was elated and hopeful of coming back home, as he projected only 4 months to go. However, for his family now, his coming back that seemed so near now seems so far.
Kama ni mahali ningeweza kuwa nimeenda, ningekuwa nimefika. Because that is hiyo ndio Kabiru ndiye roho yangu.
Today, Benedict's family came together to hold prayers for him and seek divine guidance for the distressful situation. That of their son missing over 12,000 kilometers away from Kenya in Haiti.
He was a father,
Amekuwa baba yangu, amesimama. He's rafiki yangu, mtu mwenye kila wakati tungeongea na yeye. Sikudhani kuna siku ilikuwa inapita bila hatujaongea.
Tuna imani kwamba anatusikia pale hapo, anatuona, na tuna imani kwamba ataturudia nyumbani.
Since the news of his unknown whereabouts came to light, the National Police Service has indicated that search and recovery efforts have been ongoing, albeit hesitant on the status of Benedict as to whether Benedict is alive or not.
Tuko na officer yetu ule bado ako missing, na bado tunazidi kutafuta na tumpata. Tukumpata tutawajulisha pia.
This uncertainty has left Benedict's family with a heavy burden on their shoulders.
Sasa wananiambia they are rescuing, sijui kama wako hapo ama wameenda radius or diameter ya kilomita gapi. The only sub-county commander ananiambia they are doing it. Nikimsukuma sana na muuliza nataka kujua sasa wametembea kiasi gani, ananiambia hata yeye ajui.
Hivyo tu anasema wangekuwa wametuambia the procedure, wanatuambia alikuwa na simu yake ilizimwa 10 kilometers from there. We haven't, tunaambiwa is missing.
Hii search and rescue mission itaisha lini? Sababu tuko na wasiwasi kwamba tumekaa sana.
And even as this family now waits on answers from the government, they keep hope of a positive outcome from the search operations ongoing in Haiti. Sheila Chelangat for TV47.
All right, thank you, Sheila, for that report, a developing story that we give you more updates on. Now to this story. Cape Cherere High School in Baringo North is a place that serves not only as a center of learning, but also as a home for students whose families have been torn apart by banditry attacks. Now, during school holidays, many students opt to stay in school as it is safer. Well, the dire situation has caught the attention of local leaders who are now calling for more support to ensure that these learners complete their education.
For these students, school is more than just a place of education. It is their sanctuary. Many of them hail from villages that have been left desolate by ruthless bandits.
Most of the parents you see here are parents who are affected by the banditry. And sometimes they bring their children here for safety. So it's a safe haven for our children. And sometimes sending them home even for anything is difficult. As we are talking today, two of my girls are not in school. They are attending the burial of their father who was killed this week. And so they are burying their father today. And it is so sad. Sometimes you don't have any opportunity to send them home. We have financial challenges emanating from various issues, but we are happy that you are coming here. You'll address our enoughness.
The dire situation has caught the attention of local leaders who are now calling for more support to ensure that learners complete their education.
Principal amesema hapa imekuwa rescue school. Haijakuwa shule kamili, lakini imekuwa rescue center ya watu kukuja kukaa kwa sababu ya insecurity. Kwa hii serikali ambayo tumepigania usiku na mchana, hatutaki hiyo mambo iendelee. Tunaomba kwa heshima kubwa mutumie apparatus yote ya security Kenya hii iendelee, tupate amani ili Mogoswok, hapa ni Mogoswok na upande hiyo ingine kwetu ni Turkway, tupate utulivu.
Speaking during a Thanksgiving service for the school's excellence performance, Education CS Julius Ogamba reassured stakeholders that the government is working to resolve challenges in the education sector, especially concerning the transition to senior school.
I wish to inform you that we have now fully addressed the concerns about the transition from junior school to senior school, particularly regarding the pathways and placement criteria to grade 10. Placement in senior school pathways will be guided by a balance of learner interests, available infrastructure, and equity considerations. Schools will be supported to offer at least 2 or 3 pathways to ensure learners have options that align with their career aspirations.
As the government works on long-term solutions to insecurity in Baringo North, Cape Cherere High School continues to be a beacon of hope, offering not just education but also shelter for its students. Andrin Kilemi, TV47.
In the same breath, learners at Kakoit Primary School, Teso North in Busia County, have been forced to learn in classrooms without roofs after the wind blew off their classroom's roof 2 years ago. These parents and the school's board are calling on the government to intervene and rehabilitate their dilapidated school buildings. Our reporter Anastasia Mukabi with details of that.
This is a clear picture of Kakoit Primary School in Teso North Sub-County. Learners gathered under a tree, constantly distracted by the harsh weather following the poor conditions of their classrooms. Walls cracked and crumbling, broken windows, roof missing in places, and floor is uneven, a condition that has been there for about 2 years, leaving parents and learners tired and frustrated, faulting the leadership of Busia County for ignorance.
Kwa hizo miaka mbili hakuna mdhamini yote ambaye amejitolea kuja kutusaidia.
Ndio kwa hiyo maofisi yote ma MP analia tu hana usaidizi na yeye ndio MP area. The same to sitting MCA wakienda hivyo wanasomea hapa.
With the fears that their children may contract waterborne diseases, especially during this rainy season, currently the learners are fighting jiggers invasion in the school.
Hawana ile time ya kusoma vizuri, hawa concentrate, wanawashwa. Ndio maana hata kwa hii shule sijui kama tutaipata president pia.
Out there I know there are organizations and individuals who are willing to help, but they want to see accountability and transparency.
Despite numerous efforts by the school's board to reach out over the dilapidated state of the school, parents called on the government to intervene and give the learners a decent and safe place to learn, as the future of the community depends on the education of the children.
So naomba serikali kwa kila kitengo yote ambayo wako pale waje tafadhali wakuje waangalie mazingira.
Naomba Ministry of Education, hatujui kama kuna disbursement za pesa yoyote huwa zinaletwa Kakoit. CDF hatujui kama Kakoit huwa inapata ama kuna hapo. Tunaomba tafadhali muingilie kati.
Anastasia Mukabi, TV47.
Thank you, Anastasia. Now, when the government adopted the competency-based curriculum, that is the CBC, it was seen as a breakthrough for the education system in Kenya, designed to better prepare students for their future. But as our senior education affairs reporter Andrin Kilemi found on her journey to the North Rift, the reality is far from equal. In this special report, the elusive equalizer will take you through the glaring inequalities that, of course, threaten to leave many students behind.
Northwest of Kenya's bustling capital, Nairobi, lies West Pokot County. From the sky, this land that is a part of Kenya's Great Rift Valley lies a stunning landscape with hilly terrains in the rocky savanna where space is abundant but resources are scarce. Beyond these green hills, however, the land whispers a different tale, one of struggle, resilience, and determination. Its spirited people have adopted to a life where distances aren't measured in kilometers but in hours trekked by foot. This is Cheptulel location, a place right at the border of Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot counties. It is a known hideout for bandits where gunfire often drowns out the sound of laughter. In this part of West Pokot, education is not just a right, it is a journey. Step by step, breath by breath, we climbed this mountain alongside National Police reservists, tracing the same rough route children take each morning, not in search of adventure, but in pursuit of education.
Almost. Almost.
Indeed, no shortcuts exist here. Only the determined reach the top. 50 minutes of climbing, 50 minutes of dust, sweat, and aching muscles. And yet, this is the daily routine for students of Chesagon Primary School.
Mtoto ambaye anatoka mbali, anatoka like 4 kilometers akiteremkia down the cliff, the high cliff.
No desks, no walls, just the open sky and a scorching sun overhead. And this is where lessons are taught every day under the open sky.
Well done, Ungekuja mchana saa 7 hapa, ungekuta kwamba jua iko kali sana. Tunazunguka kwa vivuli ya miti.
Introduced in 2017, the competency-based curriculum or CBC promised a revolution in learning. A practical, skills-based approach for the 21st century. Yet, 8 years after its rollout, a deep divide is evident. In some urban centers, CBC thrives with resources and support, but in areas like here in West Pokot, it's a daily battle against limited resources, teacher shortages, and crumbling infrastructure.
I believe it's a good system. It would have been a game changer in our country. But the way the CBC was implemented in this country, I think many Kenyans were not prepared. In fact, by the time Kenyans realized there is something called CBC going on, it is when we had already gone 9 years into CBC.
We have failed a bit to look into the provision of the basic requirements that would have enabled 100% rollout of CBC.
Not so long ago, these learners had a classroom where they could sit, learn, and dream of a better tomorrow. But due to their attacks, families fled, leaving the classrooms and schools behind.
Tumetoka shule Chesagon sehemu ya chini penye tulikuwa kwa sababu ya insecurity, tukahamia ECD iko pale chini, ikaendelea kwa escalate mambo ya insecurity mpaka tumejipata hapa. Hapa si shule, hapa ni uwanja tu, tumefuata watoto, ni kama mobile unit, tumefuata penye wazazi wao wameenda.
You might wonder why families prefer to live on these mountain tops. It's not for the views. It's a survival strategy. From up high, they can spot danger long before it arrives.
Hao maadui wakikujanga, wakionekana nduru ndio hiyo. So hapo sasa tunahalat kila mtu maneno iko mbaya. So ndio tunakuwa ina nini, pengine tunahamisha watoto ama tunahamisha pengine kuna mzee mmoja ako na mbuzi ama wawili wanasongesha hawa wanyama.
Tunaomba serikali watupatie yani na askari ya kuchunga shule. Ndio hata watoto wakiambiwa wakuje kwa saa ile mzuri, wakuje wakijua kuna security ya kutosha.
CBC demands hands-on learning, but to the contrary, reality hits hard at Chesagon. Resources are scarce, and what little they had, like textbooks, was devoured by termites in the abandoned school.
Mtaala wa CBC ni mtaala nzuri sana. Japo sasa katika ile practical aspect, unaona sasa katika ile mazingira tuko mara mingi hatuna vifaa.
We have tried as a county government, but we still have challenges that we have. Children who don't have classrooms, they don't have enough desks and other facilities. So that is a disparity. This curriculum will only advantage those whose parents are educated and well off.
The promise of a practical, skills-based education is further compromised by a critical shortage of qualified teachers.
Hata saizi tukiongea hivi, hatuna walimu from the Teacher Service Commission. I'm the only TSA teacher. Wale walimu wengine walitafuta uhamisho. Walikuwa wanatoka side ya Marakwet, some from Uasin Gishu County. So at the moment niko na volunteers ambao wazazi wamejaribu kushikilia wasaidie watoto.
The elephant in the room is having enough budget in the Ministry of Education to implement the system so that resources are distributed equally across the country, so that all institutions in the country have at least some relative advantage.
Let us look at all the resources we have in the sector and ask ourselves how best can we utilize the resources that we have in the sector to make sure that we are not disadvantaging any child.
Our journey takes us to a different area. It is 9:30 a.m. at Arpolo Primary School in Kapenguria, West Pokot County. This is the earliest learners get to school. they cannot risk trekking before sunrise.
Sasa asubuhi tunakuja tu kama jua imekuwa kidogo. Sasa tunakuja tunaangalia huku.
In these remote banditry-prone areas, schools face a double challenge. They not only struggle with inconsistency in school attendance, but are also fighting for every bit of funding to schools.
This area is remote. This is a rural area. People don't attach so much importance to having birth certificate, registering learners with their Department of Persons, Registration of Persons. Now, when the ministry insisted that learners be uploaded on NEMIS using birth certificates, it was hard time for the school to receive the funds from the ministry, because a small number of learners could have birth certificates. Coupling with this insecurity, most of the parents took away their learners. Imagine the population was 400 coming down to 220. And of the 220, a quarter could have birth certificate. We use those few to upload our names, and that's the number that the government used to give us money. To run the school becomes difficult because the money we receive will not gather all the needs of the school.
School heads in this region face relentless pressure as insecurity forces families to flee. When calm is restored, parents return, demanding their children be readmitted.
A learner that was not physically in class when registration was on features later. The parent is telling you, register my child. When you tell it is not possible again, the portal has been closed by the neck, the parents become very furious, without knowing that this thing is about it is system-generated information.
Dennis Sang, a grade 9 learner at Arpolo Primary School, has already felt the sting of disruption. His family was forced to flee, and by the time they returned 2 years later, his peers had already advanced to the next level.
Nilifanya mtihani hapa Arpolo grade 6. Sasa baba yangu akasema mtuame hapa Arpolo. Arpolo imekuwa fida. Tukama huko Sigora. Nikaenda kukaa nyumbani huko Sigora. Kakaa nyumbani. Amani kakuja huko. Ikakuja Arpolo. Sasa nikasema kama Amani imekuja Arpolo niende shule yangu. Sasa walimu wakasema kaa grade 6 kidogo, somea grade 6 kidogo Arpolo.
150 kilometers south of West Pokot, a similar struggle unfolds. Here in Baringo, learners endure a lot on their way to school. From the rough terrain to crossing swelling rivers while having to navigate paths where animals roam. In extreme cases, police officers escort them for safety. For boarding students, their classrooms turn into dormitories by night.
While I believe that we are supposed to be equitable, or we are supposed to be equal, that is a far-fetched theory. We should be. And it is important for government to distribute resources equally. But it's a long shot. The amount of resources that are available in government are limited. So it's upon communities and us to be innovative and ingenious in creating opportunities for people to thrive.
For the first time in 13 years, Mugutani residents enjoy peace. The first 3 months of 2025 have been calm, and this newfound peace is reflected in classrooms where an increase in student enrollment is evident.
This has never happened again, right from 2012. Lakini sasa, the gun is silent. Everything in the community has returned to normalcy. Shule tunaendelea vizuri. And no wonder that is why nilikuwa na hamasisha wazazi wetu warudi.
You have been around. Have you seen a gun-toting person? Far from it.
Just months ago, spent cartridges littered these grounds like fallen flowers. The community is, however, hopeful that guns will remain silent forever.
Kabla utulivu kurejea mambo ilikuwa mbaya. Kila wakati ilikuwa ni labda kukimbia. Wakati mwingine unatafuta mandari ya kujificha kwa sababu ilikuwa babaya. Kwa sababu hao wakora wangekuja mpaka karibu kwa shule. Unastukia hata wakati bado huko darasani, risasi imeingia huko ndani.
Every day, Alan Chebi, a grade 5 student at Embosos Primary in Baringo, braves the heat of an iron sheet classroom. But his thirst for knowledge never fades. When the bell rings, he carefully gathers his books and steps out. His journey home is marked by dusty, rocky roads and thorny thickets. Unlike many children his age, there is no parent waiting for him at home. It is only his grandmother. His father was killed in a bandit attack when he was just 3 days old. His mother fled soon after, leaving his grandmother as his only family.
Ruben ni kijana wangu. Aliwawa na wajankile 2013. Ilikuwa ni tarehe 8 Januari. Akawawa. Na ng'ombe zikaenda. Ng'ombe 70 na sijui nilikuwa na 76 ilienda. Sasa sisi tukatangatana tukabebana na watoto. Aliwacha watoto 5. Huyu ndio alikuwa ya 5 amewachwa. Sasa wa 5 ndio sasa mama yao naye ni mama ataki mtu ya kunyamaza ana maneno mingi. Sasa nikimwambia twende hivi ataki twende hivi, mimi naenda na watoto. Watoto ataki niwaache hawa, tunatembea na watoto hawa tukienda na tukirudi, tukienda tukirudi.
While many CBC students enjoy the support of their parents tackling homework in the evening, Alan sits alone, his grandmother unable to assist.
Ananiambia mimi nimepea homework nifanye. Naambia sasa kula kabla hujakula saa yote wewe ingia kwa meza, angalia kitabu yako vile umefanywa. Kwa vile mimi sasa ni mzee sasa sijui kufunza hawa. Jaza yenye umepewa kesho upeleke mwalimu yako akwambie yenye umeanguka ama yenye umepata ni sawa. Juu sisi wengine hatukusoma.
Instead of leveling the playing field, the CBC system seems to be deepening the divide between those who have resources and those that don't have. This is particularly evident for students in rural and insecurity-prone areas, as they always face challenges accessing infrastructure to fully benefit from the CBC system.
There are children who have finished even grade 6, grade 7, who are not able to read and write English, in English and Kiswahili. And they are supposed to prepare for national exams now going forward. You'll be surprised about the numbers. If a proper research is done today, the number of children who have finished even up to grade 9 and they cannot be able to read and write in English or Kiswahili. And they're in this country 61 years after independence.
2, 3. In urban areas like here in Nairobi, a different reality unfolds. Classrooms are well structured with desks neatly arranged. Here at Kasarani Group of Schools, bright walls display charts that aid in interactive learning. Trained teachers walk from desk to desk, assisting learners with hands-on activities.
We can use papers, TJ. We can use sticks.
Like right now we were doing creative activities whereby we were doing mosaic technique, whereby we decorate items. Like in this technique, we only use one type of material. So we pick a material, work on it, do our decoration. Whereby we don't have materials, we always improvise from the locally available materials. And we make sure that the learners have fun as they are learning and that they do a lot of activities to make sure that they open their minds and that they are able to learn a lot and experience a lot by themselves.
This sharp contrast raises a critical question. Can CBC truly be effective and succeed when opportunities vary so drastically?
If this problem persists, it will be a national problem of a monumental proportion in the near future. Monumental proportion because the more the number of children that you take to school in circumstances that do not empower them with the knowledge they deserve and desire to be able to build life after school, the more people you create with the grievances against society. Yeah. And when you have so many people with grievances against the society, you are actually predisposing that society to calamities.
Experts argue that the focus should not only be on what is lacking, but maximizing what is available.
Let us go back to the blueprint of what we had in mind when we were thinking about rolling out of competency-based curriculum. Let us think about the conversations we had before. The national policy paper that was used to develop the idea of rolling out CBC. Let us look at what has worked and what has not worked.
The CBC has no problem. We have created problems ourselves through haphazard implementation.
God forbid, but education sector is like it's on its deathbed unless something serious happens and we find resources to be able to fund teachers. We are not able to train enough teachers because we still have a very huge gap nationally.
Until then, the vision of a holistic skills-based education system remains unclear. What is clear, though, is that if systemic barriers like unequal access and quality gaps are not addressed, education, a force that ensures everyone has a fair chance to succeed, will remain the elusive equalizer. Andrin Kilemi, TV47.
See, you want to appreciate the great work done by Andrin and the rest of the team, but at the same time, it brings a lot of questions. And we ask ourselves this evening, just what can government do then to make sure that they strike a balance and bridge the gap as to the inequalities of CBC? We come back and we'll discuss that after this break.
Coming up after the break. State House outlines events that will shape the tour of Mount Kenya by President William Ruto starting Tuesday. The tour has raised mixed reactions.
Is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Arora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
For comprehensive information and education on your health, Body Garage is here.
Don't allow anyone to pluck out your good tooth. As long as it is strong,
and stable.
Cancer doesn't start today and you get the symptoms tomorrow. By the time you pick it or the time it is manifesting in you, probably will be there about 5 to 10 years.
The eye is the window to the rest of the body.
Don't forget to stay hydrated.
And of course, you at home do take your water.
So the ultimate test is actually you check your urine. Your urine should be clear.
Clear like the water?
Yes. Should be able to see the other side of the urine. If your urine is colored or has changed color, you cannot see the other side, then you have not taken enough water.
Don't forget regular health checkups. Early detection saves lives.
I want the message be, we can prevent cervical cancer. We prevent cervical cancer in several ways. You have young girls and even somebody who's above that age, you can pay at least every 3 years. Somebody should have a pap smear done.
If you are 40, 45, 50, going upward, once a year, please go see a doctor. Yeah, it's just for normal routine maintenance.
All right, before we get into much as to news, I think it's also important that we address some of the key stories that we have carried this evening, largely around the discrepancies that we get to witness as to the question of education, and my guests are in studio already for that great conversation. Remember, it's basically about the elusiveness of the competency-based curriculum, or perhaps the elusiveness of education in the country. And now that we always say, or they constantly say, that that is an equalizer. And we also talk about the inequalities that we continue to witness as to the competency-based curriculum. On set is John Mugo. John Mugo is Executive Director, Zizi Afrique Foundation. Thank you so much for creating time. And then we have Christina Kelo. Christina Kelo is the Education Programs Officer of Jesse. Thank you so much for creating time. You'll probably tell us what Jesse does, you know, largely. And we also have Brian Busire, who is the Head of Play Teach for Kenya. Asanteni sana, ladies and gentlemen, for creating time. I know this conversation is not coming to an end anytime soon, and we constantly want to ask ourselves whether we were ready for the competency-based curriculum. I think you've seen the stories that we have carried, and it breaks my heart that we get to hear these discrepancies as to students that are in rural areas compared to those ones in the urban areas. Maybe we need to go back from the point of the 844 system. Do you all suppose that the discrepancies were as huge as we get to witness today? Because most of them you hear could be as a result of insecurity, banditry, which are concerns that have been in existence before. Do you suppose that even with the 844 system, perhaps there was not much of a difference in terms of making sure that there's, you know, equalization of basically the question of education for students? John.
Yeah, thank you so much, and good evening, viewers. The
when we compare the previous curriculum and this one, the quality has always been low. So for me, it hasn't made a very big difference because we haven't addressed the quality issues. We know learning outcomes have been low, but we know that the inequities have been very wide. When you compare the arid north and many other parts, you find a child learning in one county has more than 10 times the chances of learning than another county, and yet all these are government schools. What CBC has done is, because we don't have teachers that are ready everywhere, so schools that are investing in CBC are running faster, and those schools now, like what we've seen in West Pokot, are falling behind even further. So if we don't do something to ensure that there is equitable implementation of CBC, then inequities are going to widen. What is a priority is teacher training, because CBC pegs on a good teacher, you know, working with children and developing learning materials where they are. As opposed to previously when you'd have a textbook as a teacher and you're using a book to teach children.
Right.
Now you're using activities. So if the teacher is not able to plan such activities, and another one is able to do it very well, like we have seen in Kasarani, then I think it's a serious problem and we need to do something urgently.
And of course one would want to ask, how is this going to be structured to make sure that, well, whether a teacher is low or not, then at least there is a balance as to it. But what I realize is the problem is what it is that you see, that perhaps there's not much a difference with what happened with 844 and now that we are at the competency-based curriculum level. Caroline, reality is that we all assume that what was a problem, you know, with 844 would have been addressed by, you know, the competency-based curriculum. And so when we're looking at just how, you know, there's exacerbating educational inequalities in the country, what do you suppose is the role of the competency-based curriculum in addressing this?
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Just like John has mentioned, there's a serious inequality. There was. And chances are that indeed the gap is going to widen.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. CBC is well intentioned. Actually, CBC is followed to the letter, should be an equalizer. But the challenge is, how much attention are we paying to the Baringo, to the Pokot, what we were watching?
Right.
When we started when we started devolution, there was hope that the rural counties were going to be enabled just as the urban. But unfortunately, they haven't been enabled. What does that mean?
Right.
That means that me as a teacher, I would still prefer to teach in Nairobi and not in the rural. So what does that make of that child?
Okay.
So let's go CBC. CBC is so hands-on. And there's so much material that is required. So if I am to be taken to a teacher in a school but to go and teach in a school in Baringo, there are no classes.
Okay.
So when are we going to start talking about issues of learners bring a glass of rice, or we want to make mosaic if we don't even have the basic infrastructure?
Okay.
Yeah. So we may not in the cities. We may be able to achieve, because we've seen the school in Kasarani is doing very well. Actually, they are close to 70% of what CBC should look like. You have heard the teacher talk about the learners are doing themselves, they are happy, they are enjoying, so it is not a chalk and talk kind of learning.
And do you suppose that is a private vis-a-vis public you know, scenario? Because then is this private? And what of the public institutions, even in the urban areas?
But I will still say that even public schools in Nairobi or in cities or in towns are still better than the rural.
Okay.
Because the rural do not have the very of the basics.
All right.
But here, first, we have the teachers. Most teachers would prefer being here. What they do not have is the training.
Okay, we'll be coming back to that. We'll be coming back to that. Briefly, we get to hear from you also just for a minute as to the same. And, the education boss, so CS, Ugamba says that, they have addressed concerns of transition and placement. There is available infrastructure. There is equity, equality. You almost want to ask yourself, are we hearing right?
Well, thank you so much, Linda, for the question. Well, the truth is CBC has created some bit of inequality, given that it's hands-on. A lot of people, like for example, you need a lot of parental involvement. When growing up, going to school, parents knew when you take your child to school, the teacher was the one who will be able to do everything. But in addition to that, my thoughts are, for us to be able to even make CBC work, we should not throw blame to what has the government not done, because I feel it's a multidisciplinary approach. We need all hands on deck to make sure that this is done.
How when it's a concern of insecurity in areas of the North Rift, and perhaps this security has not been guaranteed, just how hands-on can a teacher be? A teacher who is there's no infrastructure, they don't have resources, that they don't have the capability. How hands-on can we get? What can parents do?
Well, the truth is, let's say, for example, in the case of the North, you see the teacher comes from a community. The reason why, for example, teachers will be afraid to, let's say, for example, work in the North is because it doesn't feel safe. And you see, feeling safe is not the role of the head teacher alone. The community needs to come together. There is a role for everyone to be able to play to make sure that the community feels safe. So the police need to be able to do their job. Everyone needs to be able to come together, and all hands need to be there on deck. And in the process, you see, for example, even in CBC, just in addition to that, what I'll add is, for even that learner who is in that area, you need to go beyond what he's learning in class, because he's also observant of what is going around him. So he needs social, emotional learning also to take place to help him overcome. Like, for example, the video you are able to share. I am sure that not everyone goes through hurdles going to school. So there is need for also emotional support. That means also the healthcare needs to support so that this child can be able to learn.
And let's appreciate the children to just walk 50. All the way so that you get to class, and then later on in the evening and in harsh conditions is one thing that we actually have to
There's something that came out of that where they are taken to a hill. I think that's also what community has done, which is a plus. Let's take these children, let them learn up here so that they are able to see danger.
Otherwise, if the community didn't come in place, then school would have stopped, because you see the teacher was saying they had to form a mobile class. So we need to have that in us, so that we are not saying, yes, the government has its role to play, but also parents, we have our role to play. We all have a role to play.
Well put. And of course, this is the discussion that will take us all the way to 11, but we have to pick some more stories, and then we'll come back to that later. So as President William Ruto returns to central Kenya counties since his last visit, that was in August 2024, for a 5-day working tour between April the 1st and April 5th, 2025, a section of projects have been completed, while many are in various stages of completion. Now, according to Ruto's allies, others are ripe for launching in the ongoing implementation of the transformative bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Micah Gongo has details as to what we anticipate as to this visit.
Anaifungua bamba ya maonyesho. Makofi mazuri kwake Mheshimiwa Rais.
5 months after the head of state led a grenade of MPs for the ouster of his former deputy Rigathi Gachagua, a section of his supporters are out gun blazing to defend his development project in the region. In his scheduled Mount Kenya tour, the head of state is set to issue title deeds in Kieni and Tigania West constituencies. He will also inspect ongoing construction of the county aggregation and industrial park in Laikipia West and Githunguri constituencies. The national government and counties are collaborating in the construction of 47 county aggregation and industrial parks in every county at a cost of 500 million shillings each, with the two levels of government contributing 250 million shillings to provide the necessary space and infrastructure to investors in many economic aspects, including manufacturing and value addition in agricultural produce, Special economic zones are going to play similar roles but at a higher scale, including in pharmaceuticals. Already, the government is building 6 new special economic zones in Dongo-Kundu, Sagana in Kirinyaga County, Thika in Kiambu County, Naivasha in Nakuru County, Eldoret in Uasin Gishu County and Nasewa in Busia County. President William Ruto will also inspect ongoing water, sanitation and sewerage programs in Gembe South in Meru County, Maragua in Muranga County and Mbeere north of Embu County. The itinerary also includes visiting livestock feedlots in Tigania West and South Imenti in Meru County. These are meant to boost the livestock value chain and the government supports for farmers and produce quality meat, hides and skins, especially for the European Union and Middle East markets. And as locals prepare for the tour, leaders allied to the president have urged the locals to welcome him once he sets foot in the 9 counties of the region.
Tuungane pamoja, tuweze kuenda kukaribisha rais wetu wa Kenya ambaye ni William Ruto na Profesa Abraham Kithure na pia Linda Asiwale wengine. Tuwape baraka kwa sababu hata Biblia inasema watu wakitembea, wageni wakitembea, unafaa muwapokee ndio waweze kuweza baraka.
The tour comes at a time when the government is also warning Kenyans against chanting anti-Ruto messages.
We have said as security, we do not recognize any tradition that is in conflict with the law. If you are going to practice any of these practices, we are going to arrest you, as you've seen the arrests that have happened in those parts of the country.
The region has had high-octane politics since the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua last year. Mike Kagwango, TV47, Nairobi.
All right. Now, former Chief Justice David Maraga says that he is still holding engagements from the people and will soon announce if he will vie for presidency. He dismissed claims of being a state project. And meanwhile, Kisii County Senator Richard Onyonka now says that the Gusii community will front former CS Fred Matiang'i as a presidential candidate in 2027. Onyonka said a political party will be unveiled soon.
Today we've just come here to meet the people and worship with our brothers and sisters in the Catholic Church. We are very far from elections. We will talk about those things later. We are going to, we are talking, I told you, we are talking with people. It is, at the end of the day, you know, the choice is the people's choice. If you asked me, I will tell you, I mean, I'm the right one. The other one will also say it's the right one. At the end of the day, it is the people who will decide. I mean, just relax, wait. I mean, in due course, you will make up your mind yourself whether or not I'm a state project.
The reality we face today in Kenyan politics, I will say today here without contradiction, with utmost respect. Kenyan politics is based on arrangements and programs where political parties negotiate for what they take to their counties and areas. We have decided that as a community and as Kenyans, we are also going to set up our own political party. We are going to produce our own candidate who will negotiate with the president and all the other people who are running for political office in this country. And that candidate is none other Fred Okengo Matiang'i.
Now, hundreds of Muslims in Kenya celebrated Eid al-Fitr today, marking the official end of the fasting month of Ramadan by gathering in various open fields across the country for special prayers. Chichi Josephine with the details of that.
Hundreds of Muslim faithful in Kenya celebrated Eid al-Fitr today, marking the official end of the fasting month of Ramadan by gathering in various open fields across the country. In Nairobi, Muslims gathered at the Gravity Amusement Park where they held prayers.
Waislamu wamekuja kwa wingi, pia Christians pia wamekuja kwa wingi. Ni hiyo sherehe ya kushare.
In Nakuru, Muslim faithful thanked President William Ruto for his proclamation to abolish the vetting process for national ID application that was particularly affecting the northeastern people.
Tunapongeza ile idea na ameweka rais
wa Kenya, tuseme Waislamu walikuwa wamehangaika kutoka border districts.
In Malindi, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi joined the Muslim faithful for iftar dinner, where he commended the efforts being undertaken by Kenya in midwifing the regional peace processes in neighboring countries, saying the peace initiatives has seen normalcy return in our borders.
Wakati peace effort inatoka Kenya, watu wanafikiri tunapoteza wakati, but I want to tell you, if all these countries become insecure around us, hiyo fujo itaingia hapa.
Mudavadi adding that any candidate planning to face President William Ruto in 2027 will have a hard time.
Mimi nimekuwa kwa siasa kwa muda mrefu na nimechunguza, na mimi nataka niwaambie itakuwa vigumu sana kumshinda Mheshimiwa William Ruto 2027.
In Kirinyaga, Principal Secretary for Public Health and Professional Standards Mary Muthoni joined the Muslim faithful for an iftar in Kerugoya town, where she lauded the recent directive by the president that Muslims should be given national identity cards without much vetting.
ID card yako ndio itakusaidia kujisajili kwa SHA.
In Garissa Governor Nathef Jama during the celebrations called on the national government to come up with a permanent solution to divert River Tana's waters to other dry areas to avoid causing floods and havoc in the county.
We have suggested the flood water can be diverted to the northern parts of the country where there is a scarcity of water.
The celebrations were held in other places such as Kakamega, Taita Taveta, Narok and Kwale counties. Chichi, Josephine, TV47.
And to this unfortunate piece, the family of a slain Kisumu-based journalist wants his death probed, as they state the circumstances in which he died still remain unraveled. Fofona Bangali, a journalist who was attached to Idaya Radio Lake Victoria, that is in Kisumu County, was found lifeless in his house last Friday, and the family stating that he did not show any signs of illness. After missing to locate him for days, the family, through the help of the landlord, accessed
The landlord helped us to access the fauna house through the window. We managed to break the window, and we noticed that he was actually lying on his bed. He was not sick, so we tried to wake him up, and there was no response. So ikabidi we go to look for police to help us break the door, because by then the door was still locked from inside.
Yeah, sasa hiyo ni kazi ya polisi. Kama wanaweza kutafuta kuna nini, alafu watamwambia sisi. Sisi hatuna maneno mengine. Tutajaribu tu kuchukua bodi kama polisi imeshamaliza, alafu tuende tu peke ya pumzike.
All right, among the projects that President William Ruto will address during his tour, that is of the Mount Kenya region, or the ones that he will tour as he goes there, is the affordable housing program in various parts of the country. And TV47's Robert Gakure visited some of the ongoing projects in various counties of Mount Kenya region and filed this report.
The national government's affordable housing program, reflecting its commitment to improving living standards for all Kenyans and stimulate local economies by creating jobs.
Kabla nikuja hapa, nilikuwa na manage hoteli, nilikuwa kazi ya hoteli, na nikaona hata nikiwa huko haikuwa inanipeleka poa. Sasa nikakuja hapa juu ya kutafuta pia.
The projects are underway in multiple regions across the country. In Murang'a County, Construction works for 220 units in Mackenzie area along the Thika Superhighway is ongoing ahead of the set deadline.
Tumenufaika zaidi sababu imetupatia riziki ya kila siku. Hakuna mtu ambaye anakuja hapa anakosa pesa yake ya kukula. Kwa hivyo hatuwezi tukasema ati ya kwamba hii mradi uko hapa umeleta hasara kwetu.
In Nyeri County, the situation is similarly promising, with construction works for 849 units in full swing at the Rurengo and Blue Valley areas, whereas the construction of 110 units in Kirinyaga County are nearing completion, currently standing at 95%.
Kwa serikali naweza omba iendelee kututafutia kazi miradi kama hii. Ile kama ile unit ingine imebaki, tungeomba president akikuja atufungulie ingine.
Hundreds of youths benefiting with job opportunities, significantly alleviating the burden of unemployment, many noting that the program has provided them with a chance to earn a living and acquire skills that will benefit them in the future.
I appreciate the government inatupe support like in everything. Tunakuja tunalana.
Other than mostly the professionals like the engineers and few project management team, most of the personnel we have on the project are people from the locality.
Niko mzee lakini nafurahia sababu mahali nilikosa nikiwa kijana sasa napata saa hii.
In addition to the affordable housing program, many regions are also benefiting from modern markets aimed at boosting economic growth and creating dignified environments for traders. The national government's affordable housing program aims at improving the living standards for Kenyans, even as hundreds of others benefit with job opportunities through the ongoing constructions across the country. Robert Gakure, TV47 from Gishogo in Kirinyaga County.
The Kenya Pipeline Company, KPC, in collaboration with TV47 and Radio 47, has successfully completed a campaign to raise awareness among residents living along the oil pipeline route that is in Changamwe area of Mombasa County. And as Kinto Afula reports, residents in areas owned by the company have been urged to relocate as development projects are expected to begin.
Today marked the final day of the campaign. The journey started at Kipevu in Changamwe area, moving through portrays towards Chani Custom Ground and finally Sisi kwa Sisi. Residents enjoyed entertainment from Radio 47 and TV 47 while receiving gift hampers and sensitization.
Nikaingia mainland, nikaingia refinery. Mbona unajua ile bomba la mafuta pale chini linapitisha mafuta kiasi gani?
Pipes zinapita na chini. Hizo pipe ni hatari kwa wananchi. Kwa hivyo wenye ambaye wamepata hiyo habari na wale hawajapata habari ni vizuri kuondokea, wapeane nafasi vizuri.
KPC officials reiterated their call for residents to prioritize their safety by vacating the hazardous areas and to leave land earmarked for future KPC infrastructure projects.
Muhimu zaidi, tuko hapa kuelezea wote ambao bado wamebaki katika maeneo yale, tafadhali muhame. Tafadhali muondoshe buildings zenu ambazo umeweka pale.
Unawaambia wale watu hata wale pande ile. Unaona wale wako pande ile? Na kuna mtu wako wako huko na wewe uko hapa. Umwambie make sure yeye ameondoka kwa well areas.
The buffer zone area selected for relocation has been the subject of a legal battle for nearly 25 years. Despite residents' efforts to resist relocation by going to court, the judiciary recently ruled in favor of KPC, confirming the company's rightful ownership of the land.
Sisi kwa sisi wameanza kubomoa, yani kuacha njia ya mafuta, njia ya bomba la mafuta kuwa wazi.
This two-day media campaign to raise awareness has been aiming to protect residents from significant dangers, hence ensuring their safety and of those living at the land which is owned by the Kenya Pipeline Company. Quinto Wafula, TV47, Mombasa.
Thank you, Kinto, for that. That very story takes us for a quick short break and then we come back with more.
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Arora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
For comprehensive information and education on your health, Body Garage is here.
Don't allow anyone to pluck out your good tooth, as long as it is strong and stable.
Cancer doesn't start today and you get the symptoms tomorrow. By the time you pick it or the time it is manifesting in you, probably will be there about 5 to 10 years.
The eye is the window to the rest of the body.
Don't forget to stay hydrated.
And of course, you at home do take your water.
So the ultimate test is actually you check your urine. Your urine should be clear.
Clear like the water?
Yes. Should be able to see the other side of the urine. If your urine is colored or has changed color, you cannot see the other side, then you have not taken enough water.
Don't forget regular health checkups. Early detection saves lives.
I want the message be, we can prevent cervical cancer. We prevent cervical cancer in several ways. You have young girls and even somebody who's above that age, you can pay at least every 3 years. Somebody should have a pap smear done.
If you are 40, 45, 50 going upwards, once a year, please go see a doctor. Yeah, it's just for normal routine maintenance.
Sporty, Mr. Director or Madam Director? All right, yes, all right, we get sporty, and AFC Leopards have registered a barren draw against league defending champions Gor Mahia in the Football Kenya Federation Premier League match that was played at the Nyayo Stadium today. In an up to full capacity stadium, police were forced to disperse the fans with tear gas before the kickoff. And when the game began, both teams actually failed to find the net, settling for a barren draw. The two will now shift focus for another show down on Sunday.
Ukiangalia game, at least both teams zilikuwa zinajaribu kutafuta ushindi. Ukiangalia game, naweza sema game leo ilikuwa balance, game ilikuwa ukiangalia both ends ilikuwa so tactical, au wamekuja na tactics zao, pia wamekuja na zetu. So ilikuwa ni ule get right apate points, lakini sasa share points pia inaonyesha kuwa timu zote mbili zimejitahidi, timu zote mbili zimeprepare kutafuta points na matokeo ndio haya.
Look, we have planned first half, second half, but second half we was dominant, right? It's absolutely we will better. We give them first half like possession, but more on the behind, right? They attack mostly on the wingers position, so we know that they not have verticality. Then we changed second half. Yes, when we saw what we have to change, we changed it. But unfortunately, we didn't score, right? We come many times in the last 15 meters shooting. Yeah, we was very dangerous and better team, and this was our plan. But for the 3 points, you should be scoring. Yes.
And KCBFC held to a 2-2 draw by host Kakamega Homeboys in an FKF Premier League match that was played at Mumia Sports Complex, Kakamega County. The Bankers broke the deadlock in the 19th minute through midfielder Derek Otieno, while Homeboys responded in the 36th minute with a powerful header from Moses Shuma following a well-timed cross that is from John Omondi and bringing the score level at 1-1 going into the interval. KCB regained the lead early in the second half through a Tiang Stephen header. Homeboys and of course equalized again in the 76th minute through substitute Peter Thiongo, who capitalized on a free ball to score and ensure that the match ended a 2-2 draw. KCB will look to bounce back when they face Gor Mahia in a rescheduled leg fixture next weekend at Kenyatta Stadium, Machakos.
Kidogo imekuwa mechi si rahisi, kupata point moja ugenini. Tunashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu. Though ni game tulikuwa tumeshinda, lakini lapses kidogo tumefanya, wamepata bao ya ukombozi yakatoka sare. Bado tuko kwa race number 1. Bado ametoka na point 7, bado game 9. That's so many points. Bado tuko kwa race mpaka dakika ya mwisho.
Kwa kufunga bao najisikia at least nimerudi game ya kwanza na nimepiga bao, ni morali kwangu. Ligi ni marathon, hii imetutoka hiyo dakika mbaya, bado tunazidi kuwakia mistake, tukirudi hivyo na game next hope tutapata matokeo.
Sports news brought to you by Maybets. Bet bila stake. Predict the outcome of 8 pre-selected games and win up to 100,000 shillings. Only at maybets.com.
Well, you want to call it the inequalities in CBC, or better yet, the elusive equalizer, that is education, and the status of it in the country is what we discuss. Of course, done with sports, done with a bit of news. Maybe later on we're looking at whether there's anything that comes up. But at this very point, allow me to once again introduce the guest that I have. I think some of us are just joining in, and therefore it's important that they get to know. Right next to me is John Mugu, who is the Executive Director of Zizi Afrique Foundation. Asante sana for creating time. And Christina Kelo is the Education Programs Officer of GESI. Once again, karibu sana. And then we have Brian Bosire, Head of Play Teach for Kenya. And before we took that break, of course, the biggest question that we're asking is, in as much as the government says that they have addressed all the concerns that we would have to address, but they say we have done it, by a large chunk. They talk about transition and placement, TIC. They say available infrastructure, TIC. We talk about equity, TIC, and very many other things that they talk about. How is it then that today we are talking about education, or perhaps the competency-based curriculum, as, a complex equalizer, if you'd want to call it?
Yeah, just to note that CBC was not meant to solve all the problems that are bedeviling the education system.
All right.
So CBC is largely addressing the relevance issue. Are our children learning what they should be learning? But aspects of access, are children going to school or not? Right. Are they more absent or present? Elements of quality, is what is supposed to be happening in class happening, and are children learning, or are they just schooling? Those ones, CBC was not to be as a silver bullet for them. So they still have to be addressed through the means that government has.
And so we're talking that, I'm hearing you say that perhaps a CBC is actually not the problem. The general spectrum of education could be.
Yes, actually, and not just education, because one of the problems in the broader spectrum is that education can solve society's problems. So, so if there's no water in that community, there's no power, there is no security, there's all these things have to be in place for education to thrive. So I think in such places, ensuring that all these ministries actually work together and not just, education, because education will resolve most of the problems that it's facing because it is dependent on other sectors.
All right.
And unfortunately, the way our government is organized, if me, I'm in the Ministry of Water or Public Works, you are in education, we don't even talk. You are in your office, I'm in my office. And this doesn't work for such environments.
And we acknowledge that we can't address all this on this very sitting. But we can pick a component, and CBC is what it is that we have picked. Do you suppose that we were not prepared for this transition in the first place, Brian? Or what exactly is the problem? Because you realize that there's some people who acknowledge, and even the teachers from these areas, you've seen the stories that we've carried. Everybody starts their statement by saying that CBC was a good idea. CBC could have done us wonders. CBC is it. Yet they continue to highlight some of the problems and discrepancies that lie therein. I mean, is it a transition that we were not ready for?
Well, from where I sit, I feel like CBC is really a great idea.
Yeah.
In all honesty, the world is really changing. For children to be ready, especially in the 21st century, they say with even the introduction of artificial intelligence, for example, in the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of the jobs, like 50 to 60% of the jobs, we don't know what it will be. So we need an education that will prepare us for that, help us to deal with the different challenges that our world is presenting today, more practical skills and so on and so forth. I think the challenge is in the implementation. It's a new idea. We can't keep saying also as well, like it's a teething problem, but also the right question to ask is how can we make it work? Because if we keep saying the idea is really good, then what are the things that we need to do so that we ensure that the idea is fully implemented? In addition to government, just going back to my point previously, what also can we also do? Because you see the challenges we are facing, the truth is government cannot solve all our challenges. We all have a role to play. For example, what can parents do to support their learners? Because you see, you can't keep saying it's the role of the teacher alone to make sure that the child is fully educated. The parents have a role to play. How can community members, just as like John Mugo was saying, play their role? How can we all individually make sure that we are contributing to make sure that this program is a success?
Okay. And of course, that brings me to the question, is it an advantage or a disadvantage to, few? I mean, because then we have seen the discrepancies that we're actually talking about. And in as much as perhaps society would come in to contribute and make this work, CBC in itself, is it painting a picture of something that is a disadvantage and an advantage to different quarters?
I wouldn't say so, Linda. CBC, as it is packaged, should fit within the haves and the have-nots.
But this is not happening. So how do we,
This is not happening because of lack of knowledge, lack of awareness.
Okay.
I'm a parent to a CBC grade 9. And in this particular school, of course, it's private. Every year since they were in grade 3, they have a serious parental awareness day where when a child transits to grade 4, we are all called to school, grade 4 parents, and we are taken through each learning area so that we know what is going on. Of course, this is not happening to the rest of the parents in the rest of the country, that is. So the question is, when will these other parents, because I can talk as a teacher, I can also talk as a parent who is enabled through my son's school.
Right.
So who else is doing this? Is the government also creating awareness of this CBC to the same parents? Because until, as a community, we know what CBC looks like, however long it's going to take, we will still criticize it. So we must come to a point where we all understand what CBC is, and we are able to articulate CBC. This is what is happening in CBC. We were just talking a few minutes ago and telling ourselves the way no one even knows where grade 9 are going to. What are the pathways? okay, when we are talking about competencies, what is going on? So when you're looking at those children in Baringo and you're talking about digital literacy, self-efficacy, when do these teachers assess these skills?
Okay.
Yeah, so we need to be aware so that when we are sending our children to school, then we want to see a changed child at home, so that it is not just the same old system that is coming back.
All right.
So that we start questioning the system from a point of knowledge, not from a point of hearsay, speculation, and the likes. Yeah.
Okay. And when you talk about awareness, then I am curious, and I would want to ask, just how aware are the stakeholders, you know, in the education sector, so that they can help us then address? Because you see, what some of the stories that we've carried tonight are talking about the social economic factors that are, you know, limitations and are bringing in these inequalities that we see affecting the students. One would want to understand just how do we address some of this to ensure that then we have the ability to make sure that the competency-based curriculum gets to address this and benefit students in the country equally. Because, I mean, these are students that are going to be released to the same job market. How do we expect for them to perform? How do we expect to create a balance when they have witnessed these kinds of inequalities while we're just sitting there not addressing them?
What essentially we're talking about here is a budget issue, it's a funding issue. Because we migrated into a new system that is costly, with maintaining the same trajectory of funding, that had been there. And when we look at the cost of CBC, we just don't look at how much money it's costing.
Okay.
We look at what are called the opportunity costs. If we don't do it, how much is it going to cost us as a country? And I think it's already costing us.
Yeah.
Because if we have a crisis of youth now, because of the previous system that was only working for 10% of children, and that's why we have a youth crisis. We went through a system where we were taught to pass KCP, go to a national school, pass, go to the university, get a job. The jobs are not there. So that the frustration that has been there simmering because of the inefficiencies of the previous system is what we are seeing now.
All right.
Now, what we are likely to see is even worse if we don't take care of this, because then we will be having a youth, young people who are thinking and are able to solve many problems, meaning also they're able to create problems. Whoever can solve a problem can also create one when the situation calls for. And I think it's going to be really bad. So I think the way we prioritized housing and all that, we would have to, if the president had created, for instance, a CBC fund, so that we are not looking at the 658 billion, because education now, when you look at the national budget, has the highest
allocation.
In terms of allocation,
right.
But that money is not enough. So we have to ask ourselves, how must we now fund CBC so that teachers are well trained, the infrastructure needed is there, and urgently. Because this can't wait, because it's about 17 million of children that are going to be in the system by the time we are reaching grade 12.
And funding is a beautiful thing, but then it brings us to where we want to question the policies and whether we actually got the policies right. And if not so, then what are some of the adjustments that need to be made, that is on the policies that we had, so that then we get to see more inclusivity as well as equitable share for students to ensure that across the country, then they almost get to benefit. And even if there's going to be some difference, they shouldn't be as humongous as we witnessed today.
Yeah, I think on policies, as a country, we normally do well. If it comes to the written policies, even when you look at the ideation of CBC, excellent
the
idea.
Best.
Really, really, really great.
Okay.
You read it, you're like, if our children, even I could go through the system, this would have been nice, because you'll have identified your talent and started grooming it from such a young age. The challenge, I think, it comes in the bit from implementation.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that is implemented? Like, for example, CBC in and of itself is a very heavy, both to the parent, both to the school. Even in junior secondary, a lot of things are required to make sure that the child is learned, because it's hands-on, a lot of resources are needed to make sure that this is happening. So the question is, how can we contextualize it in so much a way that it's making sense? So that, for example, if you're asking a child, for example, if you're learning about nutrition, create protein or make protein. How do you make protein based on your local context?
Right.
One of the things I remember, even when my brother is, I think in grade 8, one of the things he came to, when he came home, he asked us is, we were told to create oily surfaces. Honestly, I was like, I'm a graduate. I also don't know what oily surfaces are.
Okay.
So how do you also empower parents to be able to support, when you're asking parents to be able to support their kids in learning? Because one of the challenges that is really standing out is there is lack of parental awareness. And there's already a bad stigma that CBC is bad.
Yes.
Or when, for example, children are sent home, they are sent to give parents homework, like you're supposed to do the work. You'll hear a lot of parents saying, you know, I have to do this work and they already finished.
Right.
But it's more of a supportive role to make sure that you are supporting your child to also learn, creating an humble environment that will enable the child to learn. So we need to think more about how do we implement, and most importantly, even contextualize. For example, if it's a child in Turkana, we can't have equal. The same way this child is learning in Nairobi cannot be the same way this child in Wajir or this child in West Pokot is learning. How do we contextualize it in such a way that at the end of the day, the child can make meaning of what he has learned in school to improve himself, his community, his surrounding, and eventually, you know, become a good citizen, as is one of the things that CBC advocates for.
I listen to this story and I hear some of the teachers there as well as the principal saying that, you know, wakati vita ilianza, the teachers fled and they asked for transfer to other, you know, regions that are not risk prone. And I'm just asking myself, so there's the latitude to do that. What exactly happens? And when this transfer letter is accorded, do these people who are now the implementers get to sit down to imagine what happens to the kids who are left in these areas, and why do you want to transfer the teachers, and just how, anyway, where are the teachers as to, you know, the policy of the CBC competency and the expectations of these very policies in terms of making sure that they instill the right education?
Yeah. Usually what happens is, yes, the teachers will get transfer letters, but it is assumed that every community has teachers. So the teachers who are getting transfer letters are getting transfers to go to safer grounds, but they do not belong here. So it is assumed that they are teachers who are supposed to be teaching these children. That is why that happens. But unfortunately, that never happens, because if I am coming from such a crisis area, the minute I go to teachers training college, then I won't go back home to look for a job there. So the children are left unattended. And I think this is not just happening to those crisis areas. It also happens even in cities here. If there is an opportunity in a certain area, then we would all rather go and teach there, forgetting what is going to happen. Because now what's going to happen to these children, we assume that that is the responsibility of the Ministry of Education. We assume that is the responsibility of the parents and the communities. So the communities, like Brian said, should create a safe environment for me, who is coming from wherever, to be able to come and teach here. So if that does not happen, then I think it is the children who suffer. Because when we were watching that and we could see that there are mobile classrooms, they could move with them. So who is moving with them? Because it is the principal who's saying, we move with these children to where their parents are. So I am a teacher for that matter. So how do I move with these children to where they are, yet my home? This other side. So that begs the question again. That takes us back to the policies, and that takes us back to the Ministry of Education. What provisions are they making for we who are teachers who are supposed to feel safe in these particular environments?
Okay. Interesting. Before we take a quick short break, we come back to you, John. And I'm just looking at the history of where it all began, maybe 8 years and counting. 2017, made the differences as to, you know, what we were used to, you know, with the 844 system. And now we're talking about 6 years of primary, 3 years of junior secondary, 3 years of secondary, and 4 years of undergraduate university. And I mean, I don't even know whether I got it right, but as Bosiri highlights, it's important that parents are aware. I just don't know whether there's need for civic education as to this, because I must admit that most of the parents are clueless. Even when it comes to the question of transition, that your child is at grade 6, you don't even know what now is going to happen. The only sure thing that you probably know is that you need to buy new uniforms, and then it ends there. And perhaps that is what is being experienced by, you know, teachers who are helping in this transition, teachers who have been introduced, call them the JSS teachers. and it is just confusing. I don't know whether I should task you to tell us what the transition process looks like from whatever age, or perhaps just paint a picture of the struggles of transitions and what needs to be done so that we get it right.
So yeah, let me just explain how CBC has been organized in terms of transitions. So the first transition is at the age of 4 years.
Okay.
So from birth, those babies, you know, small children learn at home, and then at 4 years they transit to PP1, which is now the first year of schooling.
Okay.
So from PP1 and PP2, that's ages 4 and 5. They are supposed to be introduced to things, you know, like counting, you know, recognizing numbers, sounds, and such, language, consolidating. Then the second transition is now from PP1 to grade 1, which is now at 6 years. Now, it's important that parents understand that it doesn't pay to take smaller children, younger children, to grade 1, because then why are you rushing them? And then they'll finish secondary school, and you won't be able to even get higher education loans board because they won't have turned 18 and gotten an ID. So you know that it's important that parents understand these things early.
Right.
So that transition now to grade 1 is an important one, because now they start now learning more concrete things, and writing, and you know, reading, and all that. So by the end of grade 3, they are supposed to have covered the basics, the foundations. They should be able to read. They should be able to add, subtract, you know, multiply, divide. Now those 5 years from PP1 to grade 3 is called early years education.
Okay.
And those 5 years, by the end of the 5 years, all the foundation should have been covered. Now we see that there's a big problem because that doesn't happen. But now the transition from grade now 3 to 4, from grade 4, they start now learning a little bit of abstracting things, you know, like now, you know, things that are not very concrete, moving towards abstract, grade 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
So by the end of primary, now in grade 6, what is expected is that a child can be given a newspaper in English and be able to read, or they should be watching us on TV, even if they're in Mandera, and they should be connecting with us, regardless of what Kenyan language they speak.
Okay.
So that is important to understand, because the junior school now, in grade 7, as you said, of course, they'll have different uniform and all that. The main reason was to make them feel nice. You know that they are no longer children, they're secondary,
senior,
and yet still keep them in primary school, because that's the decision that was made, that junior school would be domiciled within the primary school. So to make them feel, you know, have that feeling. But the junior school, years 7, 8, 9, is meant to be that space where a lot of career exposure is happening, where the parents, the child, and the teacher are consulting, you know, very often, so that we identify what the interests, what the capacities, capabilities, you know, career projections of this learner is, and then also now apply. So the things that CBC has, for instance, are life skills and values, which, you know, is not just academic stuff, but also life. You know, education is more holistic. So they are supposed now to apply the foundations they got.
All right.
So that by the end of grade 9, one now can say, generally, I think I'll go into sciences.
And hold it.
Or I'll go
STEM.
to, you know,
STEM.
STEM.
We allow us to take a short break, and then we come back on that level of, you know, from now grade 9, what next? After this break.
Our world is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Arora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
Welcome back to the broadcast. A bit of feedback from your end before we continue. And Musyoka, Victor Musyoka as well as Wilson Lusiki are saying they are watching, or Victor Musyoka is watching from Murang'a University. Wilson Lusiki says, Lusiki watching and following conversation from Turkana County where inequality is real, especially in ASOL areas or ASAL areas. And then we also have some other feedback here before we get to learn some more as to what the transitions are like. I think the full meaning as a competency-based curriculum makes sense than the acronym CBC. Well, interesting, because then sometimes people would get confused in the process. And of course, somebody else says the best option ever was the competency-based curriculum or the CBC, that is Gilbert Ngeno. And Ryan Phillips says that it is not equal at all. That is the competency-based curriculum. And then there is one person, Franklin Otuku, says, let 844 be returned, ndio maisha ikuwe smart, ama nitakuwa tu, okay, nitakuwa tu na gharama mingi sana as to CBC. It's very expensive. Or anasema atakuwa single forever because CBC is very expensive and they probably do not want to have struggles with their kids. Interesting. I mean, and I mean, those are valid concerns because it's actually very expensive today. Kiambiwa leta hii, kesho wanakuja, leta hii, tomorrow, you know, it's scaring. Let us not lie to one another or to Kenyans, please. CBC is a game changer. It is totally good. It will always be good till Messiah comes. Let us just improve on some problems like employing enough teachers. That is Ken Kowech. And John, we come back to you as to the transitions. We've gotten to that level of grade 9.
Yeah. So by the time now they are doing the end of grade 9, the Kenya Junior School, the other things continue, assessment, they should now have decided that generally I feel I want to be an artist, you know, or me, what I want to be doing in life is more of the arts, you know, the singing or whatever, recording. So that then you narrow down your subjects to now concentrate on a cluster.
Right.
Across these three pathways, the STEM, the humanities, and then the arts. So when you go now to senior school, then you do another 3 years of not really specializing, but within that general area of careers. And then we will have the first, which will, I think, remain a high-stake examination at the end of grade 12, the KCSE. Right. Will now, it has a different name, but it's essentially the same now, university entry examination. So that transition now to university will look similar to how it looks, only that then that time we won't all be, you know, like the clustering now will be based on very different things. And the people that are conversant with the prior A-level, this is kind of similar.
Okay.
Because in the previous A-level, you would be doing 3 subjects, either that are related into the kind of career you are going. Only that here the subjects range is a little wider.
Okay.
It's not just 3 subjects. It's a little wider. So it's important that parents understand these transitions, but also the teachers. I think the grade 9 to 10 now transition that we are expecting at the end of this year
Okay.
is going to be a challenge.
All right.
Because we still have not received lists of schools, and their categorization. I hear a selection of schools is now going to happen soon. But now the way the career guidance, has happened, has not been very clear. The preparation of those schools, if it is going to be an arts, school, many schools will have 2 to 3 of the pathways. So we won't just have one school that is only doing one pathway. And the big schools we have now, like national and extra county, might have all the 3 pathways. So because we have not addressed the issue of quality is not equal. When you look at a national school and the sub-county school, and they are both government schools, they are not offering.
Your worlds apart, yeah.
So the STEM I'll go to do in a sub-county school and the STEM I'll go to do in the big school are not the same. So how is placement going to happen? Because it's not just one variable of I'm in STEM, but I'm also in STEM and I want a better school that has better facilities and better teachers.
Okay.
So all these issues have to be thought through so that then the learners in those areas we have seen that are very disadvantaged don't now even get more disadvantaged by the transitions.
All right. What does the government need to do? Because while we say that it's a collective responsibility, the burden squarely lies with the government. And it is because it is the very same government that declares that we now are moving from 8 to 4, which many would have argued, why did you just improve on it? It is working fairly okay. But the government, and you will understand the hand of politics in this, will come to say that we must shift. So what do they need to do so that they can help us again strike this balance?
Yeah, this is now my own thinking. There need to be stabilization, especially one of the things we have observed is with every change of government, there is almost ripple effects even in things that need to be a bit stable.
Yeah.
Almost like introducing new ideologies, and this is having ripple effects in affecting the students. Top of mind, one of the complaints we get is there's limited capitation that the schools receive. So if we need, for example, even where we observe, honestly, it's so hard, for example, to learn a STEM subject under a tree. Honestly, that will be very extreme. That will be very hard. But in addition to that, I think also we also need to play a role. One of the things John has talked about is the introduction of careers. How can we also support? For example, I remember when I was young, it was hard to figure out what I wanted to be or wanted to do. Because you can tell me arts, but how do I know it's arts that I want? How do I know it's STEM? I can be good with biology, but I'm really also a good footballer. How do I make the choices and the difference to decide this is what I really want to do and this is the other thing that I want to do? And the humble suggestion I'd like to make is even us as young people, this is our country. If we want to build it, we must all put our hands together to make sure. I'll request, like, for example, if it's doctors, let's go into the classroom. Share with these kids, this is what it means to be a doctor.
Right.
I request engineers to also share, this is what you want to do. And at Teach for Kenya, one of the things that we do is every year we recruit graduates from diverse academic backgrounds, and we give them a chance to work in these schools, model, coach them, and give them an opportunity to also learn what it means. And this broadens the opportunity. Because, it's very hard for a child to say, I want to be a doctor if you have never been a doctor. Sometimes you also want to be based on your experience, your exposure, and the things that you want to be.
Right.
That's why I'll go back to my suggestion that if there's also, in addition to what the government is doing, non-profits like Zizi Africa, and the reason why I'm here is because we're all in the education space, if we continue channeling in the energy, for example, just building on what he's saying, how do we also improve quality so that we're not just making sure that children are transitioning from grade 1 to grade 9, but they are still struggling. You'll find still children in grade 8 not able to do simple class 2, class 3 work. Right. One of the discussion that has been popping up is they want to do away with maths. But at what level, for example? Because you see, you still need numeracy in our day-to-day. You need to be able to count your cash. You need to make sure your books are balanced from time to time, whatever kind of business that you're doing. So how we're also strengthening the foundation numeracy and literacy and science projects, so that to make sure that even if you're specializing in arts, you already have the basics that you need to make sure that you are excelling in whatever it is that you are doing.
Beautiful. And that gets me to these questions that, or perhaps concerns, or maybe comments that we get. Honorable Mavisi Fred says, very true, that we have a problem in terms of, getting the CBC correct, that pupils in public school can't compete with their counterparts in the private schools because CBC curriculum was designed for the rich. Wilson Losike says in Turkana County, the teacher-learner ratio is 1 to 102. 102 children or students, one teacher. And then you want to ask yourself, are we doing a proper analysis and review of it? 9 years down, and that some of the things that we learn and we pick, we are adjusting on?
The issue of teachers is such a broad area because this is not a CBC challenge.
It's always been there.
Yeah, it has always been there.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's always been lack of teachers. And now it is lack of teachers and also lack of capacity. Because the teachers could be there, but are they even trained to implement CBC? The answer, of course, is a no. So even in areas where we have enough teachers, the teachers are not able to teach the CBC competency-based. And worse off are these learners who are in grade 9, grade 7, grade 8, grade 9. Some of them are taught by graduate teachers who have gone through the regular teaching program, do not have an idea of what CBC looks like. These children are going to senior secondary schools. So as we are talking about Turkana having one teacher, we should also be thinking about the rest of the country, that these children, grade 9, are going to grade 10. Are the high school teachers trained on CBC? They do not have an idea what CBC looks like. As we are talking now, schools do not know what students to expect. So, of course, we talk about pathways and who. Principals do not know which pathway is coming to their schools. So there's a serious challenge of capacity strengthening for these teachers we've just been talking about how expensive it is to train teachers.
Right.
Yeah, but how expensive is it to transit a whole lot of learners who have not gone through a system? In the next 3-4 years, they'll be expected to go to the university, and then what? These children have never learned since they were in grade 3. Now we are taking them to high school where they are not they are teachers who are not skilled. So what the government needs to do, and they should do it as now, is to start capacity strengthening of the high school teachers in preparation for the grade 9 learners who are coming to, and also prepare the schools so that the schools are aware who's going for STEM. As my colleagues were talking, I just remembered that I think the more things are changing, the more we are going back to the same old story. Because every parent now wants their children to go to STEM. Who is telling them that, arts, what are the benefits of going for arts? We are talking AI, we are talking ICT will replace who, and if you do not know data, you will not do ABCD. So everybody wants to do tech-related courses. So who is this person who's helping these learners, as we're talking about career enhancement, who's talking to them and telling them, sports as a pathway has these benefits. Arts has these benefits. Social sciences has these benefits. I was talking to a child the other day and they were telling me, I think I'll do social sciences. And I asked, so what are social sciences? And she told me, I'm told that it is something to do with business. So what? Hello? Yeah, it's something to do with business. So you see, that is a child in grade 8. Yeah, that one was in grade 8. So this is a learner who is supposed to be helped to build their career, but they still do not know where they want to go. But when I asked the parent, so where is your child going to? They told me they're going for STEM. Oh, my child is a straight A, they top in class. Actually, they even mentioned the school where the child will go to because that is a STEM school. So who told them that's a STEM school? Yeah, so we must start talking to the teachers now. Capacity, be it in Turkana, because we keep going to those other places, yet the problem is here. Yeah. The problem is here. So we need to start capacity strengthening teachers and making sure that we have enough teachers to train, to teach these children, so that they know what they're learning and what is in for them in the next few years.
Okay.
You know what I find, Linda, is that CBC depends on a very good teacher. For it to work, the one thing we know that there's no shortcut is a very good teacher. Is a well-trained teacher, because it is moving from the way we used to teach on the board, and everyone and every child is obedient, listening to me for a whole hour preaching to them, to now learning happening and being driven by learners. And that's complex, because you have to plan very well. You have to appropriate the learning activities you will plan. You have to plan your materials, because every 5 to 10 minutes you'll be shifting to different materials. So that the teachers we have now, who are our generation, who are 844, and all that, for them to shift to this way of facilitating learning, it requires good training. Now, this training cannot happen. The Teacher Service Commission is constrained. They are the ones in charge of training. When you look at the budget allocated, they can only do so much. Bring teachers somewhere for 3 days, and then, of course, politically claim you have trained them and insist. Because now, what do you do? So I think it is unfortunate that we are struggling this way, because what would be expecting, like now when Losika says 102 children, one would expect that in this age of technology, actually that the crisis of teachers being there is becoming less and less, because we're also leveraging on technology. If that teacher who was under a tree on the hill with kids had devices and they're using Starlink internet, they actually can be taught by many other teachers who are not there. So I think we have now to not now continue thinking traditionally that I must transport teachers somewhere. The Teacher Service Commission can be supported to set up a virtual academy, so that after you come for 3 days, because it's only what our budget can, whatever, but we know that for the next 3 months, every week, you'll be doing 6 hours of training.
And do you think that would easily and in a very competent way take up the value of human touch and connection?
Not really. No, we are not removing the human touch now. We are just addressing the realities, using opportunities that are available. So we should continue employing more teachers, because when they are not teachers, because of insecurity, those children have rights
to continue education.
Like any other.
And I remember the COVID-19 times, we learned so much as to, again, the discrepancies and the inequalities that lie.
Let me just come in. At GESI, Global eSchools and Communities Initiative, what we do is we train teachers on use of technology for teaching and learning. So you may find that you have such a large number of teachers, so you don't have to meet with them physically. You can teach them on an online platform. That is what we did 2016, 2021. So we were meeting with them, and these teachers to date, they use tech for teaching and learning. So I don't know how difficult it is for even the government to adopt such models, particularly for what we have as GESI. How about approaching GESI, asking GESI, can we use your modules to train these teachers? It is the easiest way out. But the thought of bringing 100 teachers into a hall and taking them through a training may not be feasible. For one day or two. And then you tell them, go back to school and train the others using the cascade model, because the government likes the cascade model. It never works. And they talk about each being, a curriculum for the rich and expensive curriculum. We probably need to look at the general and overall benefit to this, because that is still a problem that we get to struggle with. That is probably the reason why people look at it on lenses of it is expensive and all that. And therefore, we don't get to see, if I'm going to get this money out, this is the kind of value that I'm going to get. Are we making a lot of noise as to that?
Like when I hear people saying the other curriculum was better or whatever, then I wonder, wait a minute. What are we saying as Kenyans? Because the crisis we have of youth now is caused by an education that was only working for 10% of the young people. Because the people making noise saying that curriculum was better and all are those of us who are beneficiaries, who are able to get a B, go to the university and all that. If you look at people who went through that curriculum and are thriving through other things, they had to learn that after school. It was not provided for. So as Christine said, this curriculum was actually meant to be better for the poor, but because the teacher is not well trained, that's why you find a teacher sending a homework today evening, bring this tomorrow. But it should work the way Christine said. When we open a school term, we know the kind of projects we are doing this term. So at the beginning of the term, that teacher, because they have prepared, they should call the parents, tell them this time we will require this kind of materials and all that.
Just to add on what you're saying, for you to get that kind of teacher, then it means you also need to make sure that the teaching profession is noble. Because you see the teacher who will be able to do all that is a teacher who is passionate about what he's doing. He really enjoys what he's doing. He did not settle for teaching as the last resort. So how do we also make sure that we are nobilizing the teaching? So that means, of course, it may have ripple effects, but also are we paying our teachers enough? How good are we motivating them to make sure that they are staying in class and they are doing, because you see all that energy to make sure that the child is learner-centered. The education system is learner-centered. We are using locally available resources to make sure that even though you are not able to access certain resources, but this child is still receiving quality education, then it means that teacher also needs to be empowered and not taking him as not as a serious, because you see the way we, like in our country, we normalize medicine, for example. That's also a discussion we need to have. How do you also make sure we're also getting the best? That teaching was not like the least option that I had. I tried everything. I did not get. This is the only thing that I'm getting.
But wait a minute. It gets me trying to maybe jog and juggle my mind to remember. Apart from JSS, it's been a minute since we had teachers go on strike. Those moments when after daktari, after teacher. It's been a minute. It looks like we're getting it right when it comes to teacher welfare. Or am I wrong?
I can't speak affirmatively or on the other side. But I think also the counties, especially the revolution of ECD, for example, has brought a lot of difference in terms of how that is happening. But also, I don't know if the government was able to honor its CBA agreement with them. I can't speak on that. But it's been a minute, though.
It's been a minute, unless I've not been reading news right.
CBC is carrying the day. Yeah, it's carrying the day. And there's a little bit of confusion. Why teachers were demanding for more is because, remember, there was competition for grades. So I push my students, they get A's and they do that. Then I deserve. So now there's still a little bit of how do you account for meeting expectations? How do you account for exceeding expectation? How do you account for that? So there's still a little bit of confusion. I think until they get it, then maybe we'll start hearing of, because CBC, as we're talking, actually makes the teachers work easy.
But beyond the money, there were a couple of things that were under the CBA agreements that we're talking about, including, the cluster of perhaps the cadres, promotions and all these things. I mean, well, maybe with time we'll get to understand why we actually don't get to see, which is a good thing, the strikes, we have to close, ladies and gentlemen. As we come to a close, as we get you parting shots, perhaps in like 45 seconds, that mathematics is now going to be made a subject that is not compulsory. I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but what do you make of that as we come to a close and your parting shots as well, John?
The problem of mathematics is a problem of quality. If things were working perfectly, by the time you have done 9 years of schooling, then the numeracy Brian was referring to is way covered. So demanding now a person who will go into the arts to have mathematics as a compulsory subject is like demanding of the STEM students to have history as compulsory.
All right.
So it's an issue of quality, because by end of grade 9, only maybe 40 to 50% will have met the expectations.
Okay.
So it means the other half now has to continue, you know. So I think my parting shot is that the president and parliament ought to take this thing seriously. If they don't take CBC implementation seriously, we are going to pay very costly.
Wow.
And the way is look for an extraordinary mechanism of providing funding for like 5 years, because this infrastructural teacher training is only heavy at the beginning. Then after that, we now go back to the 650 billion. Okay. So the way we had to look for an extraordinary way of doing housing, I'm not saying we tax more, but I would be very happy if the housing levy turns to CBC levy, because this is
critical.
This is a priority.
Right.
It's about Kenya's future. So, and this is the way to create jobs, because when you have people that are thinking, are solving problems and all that, even jobs creation will not be a big problem. Government will just need now to provide the infrastructure. So we need to double that budget for like 3-4 years, train teachers all well, you know, do the infrastructure stuff, and then after that. So it requires an extraordinary funding mechanism, because if we don't put a budget to it, we will continue singing about these issues, and it's a generation actually going to waste.
All right.
If we continue seeing, if we continue seeing the things. So in the next 10 years, then we'll expect to now be paying for this negligence.
Okay, as we come to a close.
Yeah, I think the government needs to take education very seriously, because those statements that are passed, mathematics is going to be, is it optional or, So when we are talking in education today, we are talking a lot about foundational literacy, numeracy. Now, when you come up and tell me that mathematics is not going to be a priority beginning today, so what are we talking about? And is it, so from grade what? So this side talks, because they send very wrong messages to everybody. Who decides what is happening in the education space? Because if we are educators, we do not know. We also just hear. So there should be a serious, a very good engagement and also forms of communication in matters relating to education. So that when I'm talking about mathematics being an optional or mathematics not being or whatever it is, then I should have an evidence, or I should have a document to back up what I'm talking about. And also some research that has been carried to confirm that indeed it is not relevant.
Okay, interesting.
I think my thoughts will be, we all need to take education seriously. If we just wait for the government to do this, then it's our future that we are tampering upon. It is our healthcare that we are tampering upon. It's our governance that we are tampering upon. So my question is, how can we all make sure that we are contributing in addition to what the government is doing? Yes, the government may get the funding that it needs, but how is the engineer thinking? Can we get even more stable structure? If an engineer will think, this infrastructure is a problem, how can we build good structures at low cost in those schools? How is a nutritionist thinking? Because you can't teach an hungry child. How will we make sure that they have food? So how can we all make sure that we are contributing? If you don't just say we are blaming the government hasn't done, but also how can we create solutions that can help? Because you see, if you're in Turkana, I'm sure there are graduates from that place. I'm curious to see what are the things that you are thinking. How can we help improve our community? Everyone, we all have a part to play, because you see, education still remains to be one of the powerful tools we can use to change the world. I'm sure the reason why we are here, even in this discussion, is because of some reason we were educated at some point.
Huge reason.
Someone was saying, even the Gen Z, the protest that happened recently, these are the effects of the free education that Kibaki did. You know, he empowered the people, and now they can be able to do that. They were able to see problems. It's the same people, if we empower them, if we don't take care of making sure that we educate this next generation, because it's projected that by 2050, Africa will have the largest population of people who are working. Every 1 out of 4 people working in the world will be coming from Africa. Now, if we don't give them the right tools that they need to create solutions, then that means we'll just be increasing poverty, we'll be increasing crime, we will be increasing ill health. So we all need to do something to make sure that we are solving. So I'm just challenging us, in addition to blaming the government, because sometimes that's what we normally do, let's also individually make sure that we go to, we are contributing. If you know of someone who looks up to you, tell them about these career choices.
Right.
If it's an engineer, think about how we can create solutions.
Beautiful. And reality is that we keep talking about the competency-based curriculum as though it's still a new thing. 9 years and counting, we are past the teething problems. We really must decide on whether we want to get it right or not.
Sure.
Conversation is bigger than our time, but that should not stop us from, continuing the conversation. It continues on our social media platforms and in various spaces that you are in. Let us talk, like you rightfully say, Busiri, that we need to enlighten our kids. We need to continue talking because then this is likely a collective, responsibility. We do not want to see the students that we have today, crying in the future or cry in the future to say that those ones were wasted years. It will not benefit us in any form. I appreciate your time. That is John Mugo, the ED, Executive Director of Zizi Africa. I also appreciate Christina Kelo, the Educations Program Officer at JC, as well as Brian Busire, Head of Play Tech for Kenya, or Teach for Kenya. But what is Head of Play Teach for Kenya? We have to close very fast.
Learners to learn through play, especially in ECD, because play comes naturally to kids. So how do we use play to make sure they're also learning and they're increasing in their foundational literacy and even science?
But too much work makes
but actually if we enjoy play, how can we make play work for us?
So that too much play does not make Jack a lazy boy. All right, thank you so much for your time. We'll close it at this very point as we look forward to continue engaging on this. My name is Linda Alela. Catherine Simaloi was assisting me on the sign language interpreter side, as well as the entire team that has made the broadcast a success. We appreciate them, and we get to see you again next week. Bye-bye.